These are the parts for the arbor support, and the direction I decided to take on this is rather than making a bronze bushing, which would require periodic lubrication, I decided to use some of these extra 45 by 75 by 16 deep groove ball bearings um, that I bought just as kind of stand-ins for the class 7 bearings. These are class 5, I think. Um, I decided to use these instead, just so I could get a permanently lubricated bearing system. And what I did here, so this is an inner race that goes on the spindle, and that was actually an 1.25 inch spindle spacer, arbor spacer. I had 3 or 4 of them that were the same length, good length for what I needed to do. This is the one that was the softest, so I was able to machine it down to size and put threads on the end. So this goes through the bore. Got these 2 spacers, which I put on a mag chuck on the vertical mill and did a real light pass with a fly cutter to cut both of these to the same dimension. First time I tried that, it came out pretty well. It's within a couple tenths, so I think good enough for this. So this is how it goes together. Kind of make the bearing cartridge with a bearing and the spacers and another bearing and the nut. So I just put a little bit of torque on that. I'll do the final assembly later, but this actually looks pretty good. Now all we have to do is slip this down into the bore and drop the screw down on top of it. And there we have it. So this will go on the assembly with the hob here, and this is the outboard support that's intended to be somewhat adjustable. And I still have to do the attachment part, but you'll see that in a later video. Well, this is embarrassing. This is the outboard arbor support, and I did a real good job of getting that exact dimension I needed to fit between the ways on my housing. What I didn't do was get this part of it here that actually rests on the housing to the right dimension from the center line. This is one case where I measured it at least 6 times and still screwed it up. So this video is going to be about fixing that problem without starting over. At least hopefully that's going to be the outcome. But I went through a lot of gymnastics with the housing and the spindle mount that's already installed to determine that the center distance between this axis, which is the spindle axis, and that surface, which is the reference surface on the housing, needed to be 2.332 inches. And when I measured this, It turned out to be somewhat less than that. So there's extra material taken off, roughly 80 thousandths. And so the question is, how do we recover from that? I'm going to go through the measurements and calculations one more time, just to confirm what I think is the case, what I believe to be the case. But, you know, I've done that a few times already, and like I said, still screwed. That's 82 thousandths of material that I need to add to the bottom face of those slides. So here's what I'm going to do. I've decided I'm going to call these scab plates. I don't think that's the actual correct term for it, but I think if I put like 3/4 inch holes or 3/8 inch holes through this, I can spot weld this to the bottom face of this. And that would be like right here. And then I would clean this up with a machining operation. You might not even be able to see it by the time I'm done. Anyway, that's the plan. Spot weld these two scab plates to the bottom and then remachine this. This is what it looks like after the fact. I tried TIG welding, but honestly that plate's a little too thick and I couldn't tell if I was getting good penetration. So basically my answer to that problem was to spray the hell out of it with anti-spatter and use the MIG machine. And that does a pretty good job. I can see a little bit of distortion in the plate, or in the scab plate, but not in the big plate. We'll see when I start machining it. But this end right here seems to have lifted just a little bit. And I suppose I could get in there and TIG the front and back surfaces. That's a pretty good idea. I think I'm going to do that. Okay, this is where this ended up. You can see the scab plates on there. That came out decently well so far. We'll see. It's still a little hot. Okay, here's the setup on the vertical mill. Hope you can see that. I'm going to try not to get my head or butt in the way of the shot, but you know, you kind of take your chances. So what I've just gotten done doing, I've indicated this surface this way and this way to make sure it's square with the table. I've checked the arbor vertically and horizontally to make sure that it's square with this. Got everything kind of tweaked and tuned the way I wanted. This is not the best clamping setup that I can imagine, but that's a pretty thick piece of steel, and I've got some machinist jacks here to keep it from moving. almost like it never happened. Well, this is what it looks like after machining. There's a lot of machining marks in the surface, but it's actually really smooth. I think the cutter I was using, maybe the combination of speeds and feeds was a little off. But even though it's kind of optically got a lot of marks in it, when I stoned it off, it feels dead smooth to the touch. So I think it's going to be fine. So this didn't actually come out too bad. You can see the outlines of the spot welds, and maybe arguably I could have put more on there. I'm not sure it really needs it, but if you didn't know better, you might think that this wasn't a screw up. There we go. That's getting a little easier with time. Key in just for the sake of verisimilitude. Oh, baby. The eagle has landed. That's down. And it's centered. Maybe just a touch tight going in, but I'll give it another little stoning. It can't be too tight. I mean, this thing rotates smoothly, and there's no knocking or anything like that. Well, now that the arbor support is in place and well centered between the ways, that establishes kind of the final center line for the entire assembly. And what's left is to put the mounting holes and the cover plate there near the big bevel gear. And I need to fabricate the rest of the gear housing and machine the back to be flush and to accept the rear cover plate. So that's what's next. I'd say this is a successful recovery. As always, please feel free to like and subscribe, and I would appreciate your comments or questions for this video. There'll be more to come. Thanks for watching.